G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to the Round 12 Stock Market video. I'm going to keep the introduction overly short this week. As you know, I live in Victoria, and if you do too, you'll know exactly what I mean when I say it is bucketing down here at the moment. I'm worried that my internet connection may even fail me soon, so I do need to get into it as soon as possible. But hope you all had an awesome week last week. It looks like this buy is a little bit easier than what we're expecting, given the fact that we've got players from Richmond and West Coast that will be playing in round 13. But all that means is that we're just delaying the inevitable in round 14. Let's put it bluntly, for lots of teams, it is going to be absolute carnage. I, for one, I'm not looking forward to round 14. But I will give a quick plug to our SuperCoach Swordplay podcast. Spills and I have just set up a new channel dedicated purely to that. We put up about a 35-40 minute episode last night. So if you want a bit of banter, a bit of a laugh, we even give some sacrifices to the SuperCoach gods. And go and check that out. That would be much appreciated. And one more thing I have done this week for the stock market video for the first time is I have added a couple of player comparison slides. There's been one question that I've been asked over and over this week. It's about a couple of defenders. Who do I get in, Lockie Whitfield or Tom Stewart? It's a really tough decision, so what I've done is I've compared the numbers from the last 5 years, gone into a little bit of detail there just to try to help you out, gives you something a little bit extra to take a look at. And then I've done the same thing in the midfield for 3 players, and they are all coming off their buys this week. So, as I said, guys, I better leave it there. Let's get straight into it. Check out the premium defenders. So, straight away, you'll notice that I do have 2 best buys this week. It is my strong recommendation that if you don't have Whitfield or Stewart, then get one of them in. I think they're clearly the best 2 options this week. I know there are a few people that don't have either. You've got a big decision on your hands. So I've crunched a few of the numbers, and for this week, as I said in the intro, I will be including a player comparison slide, so you can hopefully make the most informed decision as possible. I'll get onto that in a minute, but we'll quickly discuss the other options here. Look, along with Whitfield and Stewart, I said this last week, I have Mills, Lloyd and Laird clearly in my top 5, so all terrific options there. Now, there are 4 blokes on the list that are actually in the top 5 for total kicks. Jack Zeebel's actually second, who's obviously available in a forward line, but we've got Rich number 1, Doherty number 3, Short number 4, and the Seagull number 5 for total kicks. Now, obviously, the kick-ins have a fair bit to do with that. Jake Lloyd, I've mentioned him, really safe option. Luke Ryan's actually hitting some form. Look, after the buys, he's a possibility, but I think there are probably some better options. But we did see what he did at the end of last year. He has a really big ceiling, so yeah, maybe just keep the binoculars on him, but he's a real pod. Crispy, been running through the midfield, but probably better options. Although, you look at that 3-round average, 113. Yeah, same as Ryan. Maybe one, if you want to wait until after the buys, you could. But as I said, I've mentioned all the options that I like. Laird, Stuart we'll talk about in a minute. Dawson, I'm a pass on him. Mills, really like him. Rich, he's got the buy this week, but you know I'm a big fan of Rich. Hardwick's another interesting one. Takes a lot of the kick-ins. Look at 504,000. Are you really going to take a Blake Hardwick over a Lockie Whitfield? Are you going to take a Hardwick over a Stewart when, what's that you have to pay about 17k more? Just not for me. You know, he has come off his buy now. He is buy free. Got a really nice role there, and has averaged 97 on the season, 102 for a 3-round average. So I don't think that he's a terrible pick, but I just think given the fact we've got Whitfield and Stewart this week, I'd just be simply going for one of those 2 blokes. And last man on the list, Sam Doherty, 3-round average of only 86. So been out of form, that break evens up now, but I still think he's someone that can really push towards that top, probably 6 to 8 defenders for average by season's end. But let's get into this player comparison. It is Lockie Whitfield versus Tommy Stewart.
Let's get ready to rumble!
So let's check out some of the numbers, and we'll take a look at Whitfield and Stewart's history. So I've gone all the way back from 2017 up to 2021. You've got the games column there and the average. So we can see with Whitfield, 15, 22, 16, 17, and 5 has found it really, really hard to play a full season of football. We'll look at Stewart, 18, 21, 22, 14 and 11. So apart from that year in 2020, has seemed pretty durable. We can see the averages there in 2020 and 2021. Well, remember, 2021 is only after 11 games. Stewart's on 100 and 106 for this year. And we go back to 2019, we can see 98. So with Stewart, for the last 3 years, he's been giving us premium numbers for a defender. We compare that to Lachie Whitfield. With Whitfield, we can go all the way back to 2017, where he's got his 97 average. Very similar, isn't it? You look at 2017 and 2018 from Whitfield and compare that with 2019 and 2020 with Stewart. Stewart, 98 and 100, and Whitfield, 97 and 100. So really similar trajectories there. But then we see 2019, 111 from Whitfield, 104, and this year a bit lower at 93. Obviously with a really interrupted start to the season with that really strange liver injury. So if we're looking at who's got more runs on the board, then it is certainly Lachie Whitfield. But in saying that, we can see that Stewart has now been a premium for us for the last 2.5 years. With Whitfield, though, the last 4.5 years. We look at some of the highest scores and the lowest scores. So we'll focus on ceiling now. I suppose if we quickly go back to durability, then I would say that Tommy Stewart is the more durable pick. So he wins out for durability, I'd say. Let's have a look at ceiling. So look at some of Whitfield's highest scores from 2017. I won't go through all of them. You can see them on the screen, but I'll just go with the highest from each year. So for Whitfield, 134, 141, 170 in 2019, a 167 in 2020, and then a 110 in 2021 so far as his highest score. You look at the lowest scores, we've got a 66, 61, 86, 84, and 74. So from 2019 up to 2021, geez, hasn't he been such a consistent pick, Lachie Whitfield? We now have a look at Tommy Stewart. So we look at those highest scores back in 2017, 102, then a 135, 124, 145 in 2020, and then a 152 in 2021. So particularly during the last couple of years, we've really seen that ceiling rise from Tommy Stewart. One thing that you'll also notice in Stewart was that in 2018 and 2020, both had an injury-affected game where he scored exactly 18. So, yeah, isn't that amazing when you actually crunch numbers like this? If you look back at Whitfield in 2019, injury-affected score of 45, another one in the same year of 65, and we all remember last year in 2020 with an injury-affected score of only 8. So, if looking at ceiling and floor, then we can obviously say that Lachie Whitfield has the greater ceiling and also the higher floor as well. But again, if we're comparing it to this year, then we would say that probably Tommy Stewart has a higher floor. 3 lowest scores of 83, 87, and 92. So I've said this for the whole year, just such a consistent pick, Tommy Stewart, where as Whitfield we've seen 74, 80, and 83. So still not terrible scores from Lachie Whitfield, but remember, keep in mind they were his first 3 games. 110 to 120 have been his last 2. So he is certainly hitting form at the moment. And looking at these numbers, we can probably say that Lachie Whitfield has more runs on the board. The next thing that we'll take a look at here is their fixtures. Now, with Stewart, he's got Port, Bulldogs, the Lions, Dons, Blues, Dockers, Tigers, North, Giants, Saints, and Melbourne. So where are the friendly matches there? You'd probably say maybe the Dockers, the Blues, Essendon, they aren't any easy beats at the moment. Lions are a good side. The Dogs, obviously Port. Tigers, we all know what they can do. North, that should be a pretty good match. The Giants, they're a bit hot and cold. The Saints, again, a bit hot and cold. And then finishing off with the Ds. We compare that to Lachie Whitfield. Take a look at the next 3 weeks. North, Carlton, and Hawthorn. That is absolutely fantastic. Then runs into the Ds, which is a bit of a tougher side. Then Gold Coast, really like the look of that. The Tigers, the Swans have been playing well this year. Essendon, well, same as Geelong, no easy beats. Port are a good side, Geelong are a good side, and then finishing off with Carlton again. So, for me, if we're looking shorter term, and I know that we shouldn't just be looking short term because we're going to have these blokes, or one of these blokes at least, in our sides for the rest of the season, but that's just really, really tempting for me. North, Carlton, and then the Hawks, and then a couple of weeks later, the Gold Coast Suns. That's probably too good to pass up for me. So if I was to say who's got the best fixture, it's really, really hard to go past Lockie Whitfield. So who do I like as the better pick? I've already mentioned before that I would recommend to get both of them in if you've got a couple of spare spots in defence. But if you can only bring one of these players in, I would probably just go with Lockie Whitfield. He's got more runs on the board. He's got a huge ceiling. I really like his upcoming fixture. He's got the lower break even. But in saying that, Stewart, there's a lot going for him as well. Look, they're both obviously covering the next two rounds. That's why we're really focusing hard on these two particular players. Stewart's got a fantastic role. If we talk about roles again, we haven't really talked about that. What is Whitfield's role? He can play wing, midfield, forward, back. Look, whatever role Whitfield plays, he can score in. And that's, I suppose, another great thing about the Lockie Whitfield selection. Wherever he is, he can still deliver us some really, really good scores from week to week. Tommy Stewart's role, that is absolutely rock solid. We know what he does each and every week, so we can rely on him for some pretty consistent scores. But if you're just going with one, I'm probably going with Lockie Whitfield. On to the defenders, 250 to 500k plus. Now, the man up the top, Jack Lukosius, I do have as the best buy out of this range this week, but you will also notice that I have the caution symbol there. Now, for the last couple of weeks, he has been moved back to defence, and that's seen a spike in his scoring again. So you see a 3-rounder of 93, a season average of 81, but the last couple of weeks have actually helped that season average. Look, started like a house on fire the first couple of weeks, Lukosius, and we thought, look, is this man actually going to break out this year? I know Spills and I were talking about him in our preseason podcast, but look, he just hasn't come along, I think mainly due to the fact that he has lost that role. Now, we have seen him reclaim that role in the last couple of weeks. Does he stay there? Does he get moved back? I'm really not too sure. Jack Bowes coming in may have a slight effect on that. I'm not exactly sure when he's due back, but if you look at the numbers here, his break-even's 3, even with a projected score of 71, which is pretty modest. It's, it's below his season average. It's well below his 3-round average. He'll still go up 30k. So, look, he's probably going to have to be a keeper, you'd think. Look, there is a possibility to try to get a bit of a quick cash grab if you think that he's going to keep that role. But I suppose if you think that he's going to keep the role, then you'll most likely just want to leave him there at D6, I think. So the caution is obviously that he may move out of the back line again. We don't know that for sure. But at this stage, based off the last couple of weeks' data, he's the best buy from this lot, I think. The other man, Trent McKenzie, you can also have a look at. So an average of 97 now. We've seen him do this in the past, come in and score pretty well. We know he's the cannon. We know what his weapon is, that big left boot. But last year, he was actually a really important player with for Port. So, look, he's someone that you can have a look at. I think it's probably a little bit too risky. Would I go McKenzie or Lukosius? It's a really tough one. Look, if Lukosius keeps that role, I'd probably go with him. But, yeah, McKenzie's a real pod sort of move, may come into play for you. But, look, at the end of the day, if you've got the money, as I mentioned before, just go Stewart or Whitfield, I think. Coxie with the buy this week. Blitzarves, I'm just throwing him out. He's got some DPP swing. Buy free now. You've got players like Laird, Bianco. Some of us are still running with Fife as a loophole with that defensive mid-swing, but probably not an overly realistic option, I don't think. Shannon Hearn, I have the Mr. Burns symbol on him there. Look, he can probably score at a pretty decent rate. We know what his role is back there. Has a terrible buy, though, so you're not looking to invest in any round 14 defenders at this stage. Lockie Ash, excuse me, not a huge fan of this pick. 418,700. Lowish sort of break even, not overly low for his average, so not a huge fan of the Ash pick, but again, he's had his buy. May you wouldn't buy him. McAvoy, yeah, real pod option. Cozzy, now, this is going to be a big decision. You probably, if you had have made your mind up that you are going to chop Cozzy, you probably would have already done it last week, but look, at this stage, yeah, the decision is, do you chop him now? He's got a high break even of 80. I don't think that he'll reach that. Look, we never know, but I wouldn't assume so. I've said that in the past, though, and he has managed to crack a break even here and there, but he's obviously good cover for the buys because round 14 is going to be an absolute killer. That's what I was going to say. Look, if you've already kept him, then yeah, you're not going to trade him because he's going to be covered for the next couple of weeks. He will probably lose cash, but points on field may be more important than losing, 20 to 30k over the next couple. Jaden Short, yeah, round 14 buy. Maybe look to flip him even, I think. Darcy Moore, you're not going to invest in at this stage. Houston, yeah, a bit dodgy with his body. Yeah, the price is really nice, so isn't it? So if he can get back on the park, give a couple of nice scores in a row, then certainly an option, I think, but probably not at this stage. Daniel and Ridley have the buy. Geez, I'd love to flip Ridley, but I probably need him. Well, I definitely do need him round 14. And Christian Salem, look, if you've got him, I'd probably just get rid of him because he has that really tough buy, and you can probably just go up to a Whitfield for, about 10 or under 10k more. So I would probably do that. I wouldn't hold on to Salem. Look, he'll obviously play this week, but he's going to drop, about 40k if he goes around a 90 type score. So I'd almost cut my losses. He's been a pretty nice pod selection this year, Salem, but get rid of him at this stage. And the defenders under 250k, the man up the top, Trent Bianco, defensive midfielder, averaging 79 over his first 2 games, negative break-even of 84, and looking to rise over 70k this week. So I've not only said that he is the best buy, I'm almost saying that he is a must-have. I know that he's got a really terrible buy in round 14, but that defensive mid status, I think, is invaluable, particularly if you've got a swing here and there, a Laird or one of these types. I just really love Bianco as a pick. We know that he's going to get games. He's a talented type player, an early draft pick from a year ago that has just debuted this year, really taken his opportunity with both hands, had some really, really solid numbers in the VFL, and that wonderful form is now transferred into the AFL. So I'm wrapped that I went early on him last week, and I think lots of people would have done the same thing and got Bianco in last week. So if you don't have him, get him into your side. I think it's an absolute must this week. Apart from Bianco, there's no one else that really stands out on this list. Now, if you did get James Madden into your side, I maybe went the early crow with a Madden pick, but in positive news for Madden, potentially, not positive news for Ryan Lester. Lester did re-injure that hamstring, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Jimmy come back into the side straight after the bye. I've got my fingers crossed anyway, because he could come in really, really handy and got some nice money to make as well with a break-even of negative 41. Now, Claverino, yeah, I wouldn't go Claverino at this stage. If you've already went Bianco, you might have a Murphy back there, for example. I just wouldn't be going him. He is on the bubble. He's a defender, but with a negative break-even of 8, only an average of 41 over the first couple, I just don't think that he's going to make enough for us. He's going to be a really slow burn and not available, obviously, in the important buy. Lockie Jones, wrapped. I've got this bloke, but look, do you bring him in now? Break-even of 3. I think the ship sailed. I think that people that brought in RCD late, they've probably learnt their lesson. It's just really, really tough when a player has already had a really nice price rise to jump on. They've got to be a pretty special type player, and you've got to be really, really confident about them. Now, I'm not saying that Jones couldn't be that type of player, but just too risky for me. I'm just wrapped that he's going to be able to cover for the next couple. Luke Foley, I wouldn't go. Murphy's been disappointing. Obviously played forward over the weekend, which was an interesting move. I think that it maybe just due to circumstance, but yeah, I just didn't really like him up there in the forwards. Didn't think he had a huge impact on the game, Murphy, and possibly next week I may be even looking to flip him. If you wanted to flip him this week, if you could get up to a premium, or you need to get in someone like Bianco, for example, then I think go for it. That's fine. Mansell, he's got the buy, but a real pooey rookie. And Tommy Highmore, geez, I'm glad I got rid of this fella last week. I ended up trading Highmore for Bianco, just wrapped with that move, because knowing that he could potentially be the sub and come on mid to later on in the game, it was just too much of a risk for me, and unfortunately delivered a really low score, did manage to get on the field, no impact whatsoever. The break-even is now 58, and that 3-rounder is only 33. So, in my opinion, just jump ship, get out of Dodgeville, and move on to someone else. Get rid of Tommy Highmore. On to the big boys in the midfield, 500k plus. So straight away, again, you'll see that there are 3 players with the thinking symbol there. I'm going to do another player comparison. It's been a really popular question that's come across me this week. Who do I go out of Tuke Miller, Ollie Wines, or Josh Kelly? You've obviously got Titch there as well and Ben Cunnington, but for some reason, these have been the 3 blokes in particular that people have been asking me about. Look, what do I think about Titch? You know what I think about Titch. An absolute roller coaster. I've got the buy free symbol on him there, but if he wasn't buy free coming off the fresh one last week, I would certainly have the roller coaster symbol on there. Look, if you bring him into your side, you don't know if you're bringing him in for a 70 or a 130 plus. It's a bit of a raffle with Titch, so if you feel lucky, go and buy yourself a ticket, and hopefully a large number comes out rather than a pretty poxy one. But as I said, yeah, real mixed bagged with Titch, so up to you on that pick. Cunnington, the other man in green there, look at that 3-round average, 130. But my main issue is the fact that he's never delivered us uber elite numbers before. I think just from memory, his best season average might be around a 105. So he's not one of those blokes that we can say has runs on the board. And he's been in the system for a very long time now, Ben Cunnington. So that's a real concern for me. Can we trust this bloke to keep delivering close to that 3-round average? I just can't see it happening because he's had a lot of time in his career to show us this consistent type form, and he's never really delivered on it. So, you know, playing for North Melbourne, that's also not a great sign, I wouldn't say. I'm just going to say pass on Ben Cunnington, even though he's buy free. If he was close to the 450 mark, maybe, but just a no from me, I think. Jack Steele, now, this man is popping off at the moment, and a couple of weeks ago, I just had this gut feel it's a good idea to get Jack Steele in. Now, the numbers suggested that with his break-even, etc., but this man has just gone bang with a 3-round average of 131 and a season average of 118. Now, that season average was closer to the 110 mark just a couple of weeks ago, but it's amazing what a nice couple of weeks can do. That break-even is 63. If he didn't have that buy, I would be all over this fella. I'm telling you, that sounds a little bit wrong, doesn't it? I sound a little bit too keen, but he's just a terrific player still. I know that some people started him and it was looking like a bad decision, but he's really come back now, and he started about the 650 mark, I think, and he's close to the 600 mark now. He'll be getting closer to that starting price in the next week or two if he keeps up this form, and I don't see any reason why he couldn't. He's an absolute gun, Jack Steele. So the awkward thing about the Steele trade-in is the fact that he does have that terrible buy. So I do have the buy now, given the fact he's got that low break-even in terrific form, one of the uber elites that we can be selecting in this line. But at the same time, I do have the binoculars on him because it's going to be really tough to bring anyone in from round 14. So if by some miracle you're looking to have, 18, 17, you may look to get him in this week. The issue waiting after the buy is the fact that, he's already going to be, about 630k. So that's a bit of an issue with the Steele pick. I do love it, but unfortunately, it's a really tough time to get him, even though, in a way, looking at the numbers, it is the perfect time. Merritt, he's got the buy. Should be a pretty good trade-in, I think, after his buy, though, if you're looking for a mid. Tuke Miller we'll talk about in a minute. Track, played really well on the weekend. A lot better than Piggy, or the numbers suggested that anyway. But, I'm just not overly confident. Terrible buy. Darcy Parish. Now, I mentioned in the podcast with Spills that if you're questioning whether or not this bloke is a premium now, then don't question it anymore. He's second in the comp for clearances, third for total disposals, a contested beast. We've seen what he's done after Anzac Day, and it wasn't just a hot couple of weeks. This has been what would you call it? A monster last 5 weeks. He's got a 3-round average of 151. Even that 5-week average, or 5-round average, is a 140. So with a break even of 91, there's still a bit of cash to be made on him. So look, would I pay up 660k for him? If I was really confident I had a couple more upgrades and I had 10 trades in the bank and some money there as well, I'd go for it. Next week after his buy, I think. if you're in that lucky position, but I'm certainly not. I'd love to be. Titch, we've talked about. Wines in a minute. Brayshaw, yeah, you don't look to select him. Hopefully he can make a little bit of money this week. Look, his projected score's 90, break even 105. If he can go 120, that would be nice. Some people may be looking to flip him. That could be a decent strategy coming up to next week, I think. McRae, yeah, you wrapped if you got him, but got the buy. And Walsh, you got the buy as well. 117 break even, 119. Yeah, that's pretty achievable, I think, for both of those players.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Now, just as we are getting ready to rumble with these three fellas, the weather outside down here in Victoria is absolutely chaotic. There's calls everywhere to the SES, branches falling down. It is absolutely nuts. My dogs are going troppo, so we've just put them in the bathroom, tried to quieten them down, but unfortunately I will have to go through this a lot quicker than what I wanted to. I have 3 or 4 slides dedicated just to these 3 players, but unfortunately what I'll have to do is just use this slide, get through it pretty quickly, because I'd much rather get the stock market video out there than risk waiting too long, spending too much time analysing these 3 and not being able to upload the video. But long story short, what I've done here is I've compared the games played over the last 5 years along with their averages, and I've also tried to have a look at their ceilings. I've got the low scores from the last 5 years as well as their 3 highest scores from the last 5 years. So one thing to note as well with poor old Tuke Miller is, remember, from 2017 to 2019, he was mainly used as a tagger, but we can see there in 2020, he was actually given license to go out and hunt the ball. Still a really good defensive midfielder at the moment, but just keep that in mind when we are looking at the numbers there. But we'll start off with Josh Kelly, look at the games played. So he's managed to play 75 games over the last 5 years. Miller, 87, so 12 more games in the same amount of time. And Ollie Wines is 5 behind Miller on 82. So if we look at the numbers quickly, what that suggests anyway is that Miller is probably the most durable pick out of these 3 players. We'll then look at the averages. So we look at this bad man Josh Kelly, 114, 114, 117, 115, and currently averaging a 104 in 2021. If I'm to average the averages, that comes to a 113 over the last 5 years. Talk about being ultra consistent. That is just simply elite from Josh Kelly. We'll look at Miller, so 76, 89, 85, 106, and then currently averaging a 118. He is averaging 95. So that is okay. It's certainly not elite, but as I said, he has been a tagger in the past. We'll look at Ollie Wines over his last 5 years, 99, 97, 88, 104, and a 105 for an average of 99. So the issue I've got with that is that we've never seen elite midfield numbers. Don't get me wrong, a 104 and a 105, that's a decent average, but it's not what it takes to be one of the highest scoring midfielders in the comp. You look there at Josh Kelly, he's been doing it all the way back from 2017, and neither Miller or Wines have been able to go close for a season average so far. I understand that Miller is currently at a 118, but remember, we are only halfway through the season. So if we are looking at, I suppose, past history, who's got the most runs on the board, it's a really, really easy decision here. It is Josh Kelly. We'll now take a quick look at floors and ceilings. So it's pretty obvious when you take a quick glance at the numbers here as well, isn't it? I'll just read out the high scores from each year. So I'll start off with Kelly. Check this out. 176 in 2017, a 205, a 154, a 195, and then this year we've seen a 132. That is absolutely phenomenal. Talk about having a high ceiling. That is the absolute definition of a high ceiling. We'll go on to Miller. We see a 117, 127, 132, 142, and a 153. So what can we see there? There's certainly a pattern, is that his ceiling is growing year by year. So we've seen from 2017 all the way up to 21, him improve on his highest score each year. We'll look at Ollie Wines, 145, 157, 138, 184, which is a massive score. And then he's also given us a 143 this year. Now, what I've also done is I've averaged out their 3 highest scores from each year. Kelly's comes to a massive 151, Miller a 127, and Wines a 131. So Kelly has 20 points on average over Wines there. We now take a look at the low scores. I won't go through them all, but at the end of the day, we'll look at the totals there. We can see an average of 85 as a low score for Kelly over the last 5 years. How good is that? 85 is an average for a low score. We'll look at Miller. That is 64, but again, that does include 2 injury-affected games, the 32 and the 65 I've popped in there. And if we take a look at Wines, that low averages out to be around a 67, which is probably what we don't want to see from one of our premium midfielders. We'll look back quickly on his low scores. 2017, not too bad, 56, 76, 78, but 2018, 50, couple of 60s, 2019, the same thing. So all in all, if we take a look at these numbers in particular, what we can tell is that Josh Kelly certainly has the highest ceiling. He's got the most runs on the board. Unfortunately, though, he is the least durable pick. Keep in mind, though, we are already halfway through the season, so you're not relying on Josh to get through a whole season. We need him for about another 10 weeks. Miller, on the other hand, well, he's having a career best season. He is the player in the best form currently. So he's got the highest season average as well as the highest 3-round average as well. I'm pretty sure, I'll have to look back on the other slide, that he's got the lowest break even. I think that he is also a terrific pick. Wines is probably the bloke that I'm least keen on. So if I'm to give my rating, I'm going Wines number 3. One other thing as well that I didn't mention with the Tuke Miller selection is that some people may think with Rowley coming back into the side that may have a negative effect on Tuke Miller as well. But these were his scores when Rowell was in the side. So we've got a 111, a 98, a 126, and then another 111. In the 2 games where Rowell went off for a score of 6, there were 2 of those games, he scored an 80 and then an 81. So it's a bit of a myth that Miller does not score well when our man Rowley is in the side also. But if I was to give these last 2 a rating, it is super, super tough. I must admit that I really like the Tuke Miller selection because he's an ultra pod. All these guys are pretty much pods, but Miller in particular, for what he's done this season, he's been a really, really underrated selection. We know with his role that it's going to be pretty similar from week to week. Even when Rowell comes in, as I said, I can't see his role changing. So we know that he's going to be an inside midfielder, a tackling beast, gets a lot of the ball. I wish I had been able to go into these next couple of slides because we look at his possession count and look at the patterns there. Yeah, this year he's kicking the ball a lot more and he's actually kicking it a lot more efficiently as well. But it's really hard to go past Josh Kelly at the price, isn't it? Particularly with his upcoming fixture. We already looked at Whitfield's fixture, so you've got a pretty good idea anyway about what the GWS fixture looks like. I know with Port they're playing Geelong, then they've got a couple of nice weeks, I think, after that. Gold Coast, it's a bit so-so. But look, at the end of the day, I would either be going with Miller Jelly. If you can get both of them, hey, great. I still think that could be a really, really good move if you're looking to go 2 up this week. But personally, I went with Josh Kelly mainly because of the fact that he was at a cheaper price point. But if I had the cash, I would have probably gone with Tuke Miller. But in saying that, the reason why it's so tough as well is that Kelly's next 3 weeks, the opponents that he comes up against, I went through this already in my round review, he averages massive, massive numbers. Carlton, Hawthorn and North, you can see there that big score of 205, that was against Carlton. So either Kelly or Miller, I think, really, really solid options. Trav Boak, Tim Taranto, both fresh off the bye. Identical break-evens with a 125 there. 3-round average from Boak, 105. Taranto, 10 points under with a lowly 95. Do you invest in one of these blokes? Not for me. The only reason why you might is if you're absolutely strapped for cash. You just know that you won't be able to get to one of those Uber Elites and you've got other problems elsewhere. Maybe a lack of cash gen. I'm not too sure, but I'd only be going there if you're absolutely desperate, I think. Cam Guthrie, yeah, poor old fella. I feel really sorry for George, actually, because He brought this bloke in, I think, particularly for the buys in order to cover for 13 and 14, but unfortunately injured at the moment. Don't think he plays this week. Yeah, super unlucky, Cam Guthrie, because he was absolutely on fire, playing really, really well. And talk about on fire, there is not a player in the competition, maybe apart from Darcy Parish at the moment, that is on fire like this man is. The Bont, I don't even need to say anything about him. You've all watched him. We know what he's done. Look at the price tag. He's 681k for a reason, because his 3-round average is 144. He's an absolute gun, this bloke. Could win the Brownlow. Deserves to win a Brownlow. And if you haven't got him, geez, it's tough, isn't it? Because the price point now, it's basically out of reach. So if you're a non-Bont owner, you're just really hoping for a bad game. Unfortunately, don't think it's coming. Got the bye this week, obviously, though. Same as Libba, got the bye. Can't believe Strong went to him. I was expecting him to possibly go to McRae. That's why I ended up taking the captaincy off McRae. Gave it to Zeret, which was a pretty good decision in the end anyway. Got a few extra points, but yeah, Liver, really, really good player. Nat Fyfe, injured, unfortunately. Don't know how long he's going to be out for, but yeah, unfortunately, he is now a round 13 and 14 bye player, and maybe beyond. Just listening out for the news on Fifey. Now, Jared Lyons, really, really interesting over the weekend that he had his lowest CBA rate for the year, 17 out of 29. And lo and behold, Lachie Neale comes into the side, 25 out of 29. So Neale's certainly taken away some of those CBAs. Really interesting to note for Brisbane is that even Huey McCluggage had 12. I think Zorko was around 11. Bailey ran through there. A number of different players took some of those CBAs. So the positive thing out of that for Lions, even though I believe it's a negative that some of those CBAs have been taken away, was the fact that with only 17, he still managed to score really, really well. He was a better player out of himself and Neale, but I wouldn't be too worried going forward. He showed that with the lack of CBAs that he can still pump out a pretty nice score. So I'm still a fan of the Lions pick. After the bye, maybe, but he does have a high-ish break-even type of bloke that can go close to that anyway, though. And Lachie Neale, do you bring him in after the bye? Don't you? Well, the break-even suggests that you don't. His performance on the weekend suggests that you don't either. But remember, I think what Brisbane were doing was just trying to get one game into him before the buys, just to get, a bit of feel back, I suppose. And then after the buys, start to hit it really, really well and hit the ground running. So Neale, I would certainly wait on. No way I'd get him straight after the bye. But if you can see a couple of nice weeks from him, then you can definitely jump on after that, I think. And Clary, 703,000, so over 700k now, but that break even, it was always going to get high. After you're coming off a 200 type score, and that's out of your system, then it's going to go right back up there. So projected score of 143, I would take that every day of the week. But yeah, if you're not a Clary owner, will he ever become? Yeah, I'm not too sure. It depends on how he goes this week, but I assume that he won't get below 650k for the rest of the year, just in my opinion though. On to the midfielders, 250 to 500k. As usual, I'm going to get through this slide pretty quickly. Apologies, I did somehow forget to include James Jordan in the stock market video last week. I can't believe that. Apologies for that, but this man is actually playing well at the moment. He's got a break-even of 52, projected score of 79, and looking to rise another 12k. So my advice this week is to hold, and then I'd definitely be flipping next week. Hopefully, if you can upgrade to a premium that's just coming off their buy, I think. Cal Ward, he's buy free, but I just can't trust him. A 3-round average of 118 is ultra impressive, though. What's going to happen for the rest of the season? I just wouldn't invest in Cal Ward myself. Cripper and Heppel have the buy. I think if you've held on to Tommy Powell, then you've done that for a reason, and that is to cover for the next 2 buys. If you're planning on trading him out this week, it's a little bit crazy because the move was to trade him out last week before his buy, but personally, I did get rid of him, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago, because I just had that feeling that he'd hit a little bit of a wall. Jamont coming into the side, I think, has affected him slightly. So, yeah, with Powell, if you got him, you probably keep him, and you've done that for a reason. But, yeah, be prepared to lose some cash on him, I think. Andrew Gaff, pass for me. Chera, pass for me. Baz has the bye. Simpkin, I just think he's a trap. Carl Amon, he's buy free, a real pod, but break even 131. You're just not going to go there. Probably not even worth discussing him. Elliot Yeo is a pass. Some people may be tempted by that price and the name of Elliot Yeo. Durability is a major concern. Would not go anywhere near the Elliot Yeo pick. And I have included Matty Rao because I have heard that he is going to be playing this week, so it'll be his second game back. Now, there's absolutely no way that we trade him in this week, but just keep him on your radar because who knows what he could come down to. It may be even close to the 400k mark, and that would be an absolute bargain for someone with his potential. But durability, yeah, it's always going to be a little bit of concern, isn't it? And on to the midfielders under 250k, there is absolutely nothing to see here. It says a fair bit when there is a poo symbol next to the man right up the top. Tanner Bruin, been a terrible rookie this year, so he's got the lowest break even out of the lot. Even the two bubble boys, O'Connor and Rantel, have a break even in the positive. So break even at 12 for O'Connor, 35 for Rantel, which is actually red, which is saying a fair bit. Sam Berry, I think you've just got to get rid of on the chopping block. Terrible buy next week. And RCD, you could either go early and get rid of him this week, or else ideally you'd like another player on field and then just chop him before the buy in round 14. Lockie McNeil, the last one on the list there. Yeah, red break even of 68. He's got the buy this week. Absolutely prime for the chopping, I think. On to the rucks. So this week I'm going to keep it really simple. It's assuming that he does play, but if he does play, get Ned Reeves into your side. It's almost a non-negotiable, I think. If you've got Matty Flynn, this is one of the easiest trades that you'll make for the year. He's going to be really good cover over the next couple of rounds. Most of us have Brodie Grundy, and I think most people end up keeping on to him. We know that Max Gawn, he's going to be out round 14. So this bloke is an ideal trade in. Even if you got CCJ in for Flynn last week, it's a pretty easy solution. Well, all I'm doing, because I actually did that myself last week, all I'm doing is I'm trading out Jimmy Rowe. I'm bringing Coleman Jones into my forward line. That's where that DPP swing is really handy. And that way I'll be able to bring Reeves in for Jimmy Rowe, who I think is an ideal trade out candidate this week. So that's what I'm doing anyway. But long story short, if you don't have Reeves, get him into your side. Tracy actually had a really good game over the weekend. I think he booted 3 goals. And if you had started with him or brought him in at any stage, finally this man is looking to go up. And he should get past 200k, which would be really nice for you, I think. Peanut Laddams is a peanut. I've mentioned it, I think, a few times already, that even if he had a negative break-even of 200, I would not touch this man, just a peanut. Now, Rob, you will be surprised that I do have the best buy symbol on him there, but there is a caution symbol. I want to make it clear, and you'll already know this if you've been following my stock market videos for the last year or two, that I'm a huge believer in the fact that the only 2 ruckmen you want to finish with in your side are Max Gawn and Brodie Grundy. However, obviously, if you're looking to invest in a ruckman, you can't get Grundy at the moment. And if you've already got Max Gawn and you really want to go up, then I think that Rob is the best selection out of any of the other ruckmen. So Gawn and Grundy, number 1 and 2, and then Rob, I think, comes in at number 3 for me. You'd much rather have someone like a Nick Nat, for example, but if you look at the price difference, 609, 494, I'd much rather go with a Rob personally, but that's why I've got the caution symbol on there, because I would much rather finish with Gawn and Grundy over someone like a Rob, I think. Matty Flynn, he's just got to go, so Coleman Jones, Reeves, just get him out this week and bring another player in. Nick Nat, in phenomenal form. I think he's in the top 5 in the comp for clearances at the moment, so if you had have traded him in for Brodie Grundy, well, it's gone okay so far, but you're still missing out in that round 14 buy, unfortunately. Now, if you started with Hickey, you would be absolutely wrapped with yourself. Give yourself a big pat on the back. He's just come back from the dead in the Supercoach sense. Maxi Gawn, he's hit form in the last few weeks. I'm gaining a little bit more confidence with him now, and he's going to be my captain this week. I'll go with, I'm not too sure who I'm going to go with for the vice, but he'll certainly be my captaincy option, I think, given the fact he's coming up against another Max, Max Lynch. Normally he'd be coming up against Brody Grundy. I wouldn't look to put Grody, can't even speak, Gawn or Grundy in my captaincy loophole when they're playing against each other, because I think that they sort of cancel each other out. They're both the two elite ruckmen in the comp, so I look to go elsewhere normally. But given the fact Grundy's out, I think that that is a really, really tempting option this week to go with Gawn as captain. Darcy's injured, which is unfortunate for him. And Grundy, well, if you've already held on to him, you're going to hold on to him until he comes back. Hopefully that will be after the bye. I'm still not too sure. Listen out for the news. But for those people that did trade him out, I'm not sure how you're feeling at the moment. If you went to, well, Rob, for example, I don't know how many people would have made that move, but you would be absolutely stoked, I think, and you should have had a pretty solid round last week. On to the forwards, 500k plus. Now, the man up the top, Aaron Hall, I have as the best buy this year. He's one of those blokes, you either love him or you hate him as a pick. At the moment, I am absolutely loving him. This man has not let me down. Now, you're probably worried that his body may let him down, and then if you get him, let you down. But at this stage, I'm just willing to take the risk if I wasn't a current owner. Obviously, I am. I got him around the 400k mark. But even at 500k, I think that this guy is a lock to be a top 4 forward this year. Break even of 74. If you look at his last 5 weeks, that is still a really, really nice break even. Looking to rise 14k this week and 107 for a projected score, I think is pretty smack on. I don't think that he'll go under 100. So Aaron Hall, yeah, I'm a big advocate for this selection. Still a big pod as well, which I think's a good thing if you've got a pod that's scoring really, really well, particularly in your forward line. Then I say go out and grab him. Great cover for the next couple of weeks. Look, he could go down. I understand that he's had form issues before as well, even been dropped a couple of times. I don't think it's been this year, but in the past, I know he has. But that role down there, it is his at the moment. Now, I don't care even, and when I say at the moment, even when Luke McDonald comes in, whoever comes in, Aaron Hall will keep that role. I'm pretty certain on that. So if you don't have him, you're looking for a forward, he's the man to get in this week. Now, Kermit Zorko, as I refer to him now, I can't believe it. If you want to hear my rant, go and check out our podcast there. You can see that down the bottom, SuperCoach Swordplay, episode 2. We just did that last night. I am just spewing with this bloke, and personally, I'm actually trading him. The reason behind that is the fact that I think he's already made me a lot of cash. I think he's made about 80k since I traded him in, and he's now become a 600k round 13 and 14 buy player. So for me, I'm going to look to get some DPP happening and actually bring in a defender. So it's up to you what you do with him. I'm not worried if you want to keep on to him. You certainly do not have to trade him out, but that's a strategy that I'm going with this week anyway. I just cannot afford to have someone that's 600k sitting on the pine when I really, really need him the most. That 3-round average, 134, ultra impressive. If you compare that to the break-even of 76, you could think that I'm crazy, and I may be crazy. But at this stage, Zorko is actually leaving my side. Tommy Hawkins, he's always an option that you can bring in. We'll talk about Charlie Dixon in a minute also, who's at a cheaper price point. You know what you're going to get with Hawkins. You'll probably get a 90 to 100 average. I know that's a pretty large range, but you just never know with these key forwards. So I've never been a fan of him, even though he's been consistently up there in the top 10 for averages by the end of the season. He's just too much of a roller coaster, but he will cover for the next 2 buys. If you're willing to take the risk, then you can go for it, I think, with Tommy. Shai Bolton, I love this guy. Really, really want him in my side. Just super exciting. Whenever he gets near the ball, something happens. He's just electric, Shai Bolton, and such a skillful player. Pretty hard at it as well. But unfortunately, round 14 buy. That is the big killer. But if you can wait until after that, I think he'll be a really, really good trade-in. I've seen enough from Shai Bolton to think that he's a really solid selection. Same as Bailey Dale. If you can't get him in this week. He's obviously got his bye. But if you want to get him in next week, I think that he could also be a solid selection. That break-even is still in the green as compared to his 3-rounder, 117. 93 on the season average, but Again, I think he's got a really consistent role. He's a great user of the ball, taking a lot of those kick-ins, kicks the ball a lot. So I think he's a really solid selection, Bailey Dale. You're paying up a little bit more for him now. Ideally, you'd love to get him under 500k. Yeah, that's not going to happen if you get him in next week. But yeah, big fan of the Dale selection. Jack Zeeble, people have been talking about trading him out. I think that's absolutely bonkers. Just leave him in your side. He should, even from here on, be a top 8 forward pretty easily. I think just keep Zeeble in your side. Don't do anything silly and trade him out. And Danger, I think that he may even be back this week. So I'm going to just see how he goes, have a look at him, see if he passes the eye test. And if he does, then we've got a big decision on our hands next week. For some people, you may just go there because you're pretty desperate during that round 14 bye. You could even get him in your midfield. We know he's got that DPP status. We certainly don't bring him in this week. That's bonkers because his break-even's 198, which is massive. But if he can play a solid game, or look, let's just say if he gets a 125, he'll still lose a fair bit of cash. Could you jump on him next week? Possibly. It's a possibility, but let's just see how this man goes before we make any decisions. Onto the forwards, 250 to 500k. The man up the top, Tim Membry, no way that you could go there, is there? Surely not, but negative break-even of 14. Actually came up against a bloke who had this guy in a league match last week. Almost got him over the line as well. So had to give Timmy a shout out. Now, SPP, mid-forward, coming off his bye. Break-even of 16, a 3-round average of 104. Could you go there? He's looking to go up about 30k. He's one of these blokes that is a little bit scary to have on your side because there's never been any history of any type of consistency. There's been some games where I've watched him. I think there's been a couple he's played against Brisbane and I've thought, geez, here we go. This bloke is about to break out. Just so tough, but not a fine user of the ball. As I said, very, very inconsistent. Does have that DPP status, which is handy. For me, I couldn't go there. I'd rather spend an extra 75k even and go on Aaron Hall. But if you're a gambling man or a gambling lady, then you could look to get him in, but not for me, I don't think. Poulter, hold on to this man for one more week, and then I think you've got to trade him out. That makes sense. If you have the luxury of keeping him for the rest of the year, as that, what will it be, a M9, F7 swing, then that would be absolutely ideal. But I think most people need to cash him out in order to make another upgrade. Waitman with the bye. Langford, I'll come back to in a minute. Now, Robbie Gray, another really, really interesting selection. Do we go back to the well? I think, well, to be honest, I think the only reason why we're even looking at this pick is because he is coming off his bye. We know that he's going to cover for the next two. I'm just not a fan of Gray at this age with his role. You know, back in the days as a midfielder, absolutely elite, fantastic pick. But the consistency is something that worries me with Robbie Gray. So I'm not a huge fan of the pick, even at that price. Look, he may get up to the 450, 460k mark, but I just think that he will most likely come back down to earth again. So not a big fan of the Robbie Gray pick. Dev Robinson, this guy has been playing fantastic football, very, very high CBA rate. Yeah, terrific. If you had to trade him out, yeah, it's a little bit unlucky. You'd be a little bit hurt with that. He's got the bye this week, so you just keep on to him, I think, and I'd be trading him out in probably another couple, in my opinion anyway. Tex Walker, has he come back from the dead again? Well, 3-round average of 105. Now, that 3-round average was looking terrible just a couple of weeks ago, but all of a sudden his break-even is low at 38, sorry. Thomas is 39. Look, I couldn't do it myself. He's got a terrible bye, but no, you couldn't do it really, could you? I don't think. Taron Thomas, another one that I just couldn't do, even though he's got that 3-round average of 101 and a pretty nice role there. Just the consistency. Again, with lots of these picks here that you see in this range, it is about the consistency, and that does worry me about Taron Thomas. I'm already going with Zeeble and Hall, so there's no way that he fits my team structure. I know that most people have Zeeble, not a lot have Hall, so I suppose you could get a bit of a budget Hall type in Taron Thomas if you want to go that way and if you really want to take a risk and save some funds. Perkins with the bye, Jones with the bye, and Charlie Dixon. So he's a really interesting selection. Out of all the players here, bar one, he's the bloke that I would go with. I'd take him over Gray. I'd take him over Sam Pepper. I'd take him over Tex, I think, particularly given the fact that he's going to cover for these next two. Look, he's been in pretty fine form, 109 for a 3-rounder, but again, look at the average on the season. It's 87. Why is that? He's a key forward. It's pretty simple, I think, with Dixon. Some weeks, he's got a big ceiling and he can give you a 140 type, and other weeks, he can give you a 50 type score. Like Hawkins, are you willing to ride the roller coaster? I'd probably ride the Dixon roller coaster. Oh, would I? Hawkins has a better history, but Dixon is at a friendlier price, I think. So, who do you go? Oh, it's a tough one. I don't like either of them because I'm not a fan of key forwards, but maybe go the cheaper one in Dixon, I think. Now, the man I do want to get back to is someone that I am most likely bring into my side next week. So I could go early on him this week in order to get prepared, I suppose, but I think I will just be careful and just wait that extra week. But Cole Langford, Spills and I locked horns a little bit on this. As an Essendon supporter, he's not a huge fan of Langford pick, mentioned that his tank may not be the best. But in my opinion, at the price, you look at that DPP status, you look at the break even, you look at that 3-round average, you look at the role that he's currently playing in the side. Now, that's an inside midfield role. He has been playing off a wing during the earlier stages of the season, or for the majority of the season, I suppose you'd say. But in the last 3 weeks, due to this change in role, his scoring has just spiked. So 117 for a 3-round average, clearly the highest out of anyone on this list here. The next best is someone like a Tim Membry, who, as we know, do you go near him? He's looking to rise 45k if he gets 90. No, let's not go silly. We don't go near Tim Membry. But yeah, with Cole Langford, I am a fan of the pick if he keeps that midfield role. Now, the way that I see it, Shields out of the side, Caldwell's out of the side. We've now got McGrath out of that midfield. Now, Zeret is obviously a staple there. He's not going to move. And Darcy Parish is an absolute staple. He's not going to move. So that third spot is really up for grabs now. There'll obviously be players that just rotate through there. You know that Stringer's going to rotate through there at stages, for example. But I think that Langford is probably the next man in line after the big two there down at Essendon. So, look, for that price, we've looked at the Boltons, we've looked at the Dales. You're paying over 500k, 525k in Dale's case. So, I'm saving 50k. Would I rather go the Dale pick? Probably, but I'm willing to take the risk on Cole Langford. I'm all in on Cole Langford at this stage, but I've just got my fingers crossed that he keeps that role. If he does keep the role that he's been playing over the last 3 weeks, I can't see him averaging under 100. I just can't see it happening. But yeah, fingers crossed that it all works out for me. Wish me luck. At this stage, he's pretty much locked in for me next week. Isaac Heaney, I must admit I was getting a little bit of FOMO before last week's match, but yep, he proved that I was right. He is a trap. A pretty poor score, and if you had got him in the week before, you would have been absolutely laughing, as we mentioned in the last stock market video, at around 350k. But if you were someone that went that week later, you would be absolutely kicking yourself. Now, it's not an absolute fail at this stage, but based off the last 2 weeks, it's probably what we were expecting. Some really nice scores and then some absolute duds. Anthony Scott got the bye this week. Perfect time to trade him out. Wingard, he's buy free, but you know how I feel about Chad. Never been a fan of the pick. T-Mac has had a really, really solid season. Terrible buy though. Dusty, I think you can still get him in at this stage, but again, round 14 buy. Chad Warner, you've got to sell him. The time is absolutely now. Break even of 77. He hasn't got near there. How long's it been for now? Seemed like forever. It must be about 5 or 6 weeks, I think. So definitely trade him out if you've still got him in the side. Sidebottom, keep a watch on him, but I'm not a fan of Sidey whatsoever, even though he had a pretty solid score. Zach the Rat Bailey, 4 goals over the weekend. This guy is just super exciting. One of my favourite players in the comp. Do you go him with a break-even of 82? Well, if you look at the 3-rounder, 88, it's right on his season average, 82, so probably not. Got the bye anyway, so I'm obviously talking about next week after his bye. Jimmy Rowe, absolutely sell him. So just like Warner, the time is now. 90 for a break-even. He's been a great rookie for me this year, James Rowe, giving me some really nice on-field scores, a couple of 80s and a 70 when I really, really needed them. So thank you, Jimmy. It is absolutely time to go, though, now. Trade out James Rowe. Joey's got the bye, but do you actually trade him as well? Look, it's certainly an option. We know that he's probably not going to be a keeper now, so it may make sense if you can bring in, for example, an Aaron Hall. I think that would be a great move. If you've got Joe Danaher and you don't have Aaron Hall, I would actually make that upgrade in a heartbeat, Joey, for Aaron. Jarman Impey, he's been a little bit off, hasn't he? Roll's been a little bit all over the place in the last 2 to 3 weeks, which is a real concern, but at this stage, he's covering for the next 2. I'm not trading him out. If maybe we've got a luxury upgrade, we could possibly do that if Dangerfield's available at a nice price. There's a few options we've got up our sleeve with Impey, but very much team dependent and trade dependent. And Nick Hind, has his role changed? I swear that I saw him playing up forward, but look, I'm not too sure what's happening with Hind at this stage. So given the fact that, yeah, that role may be a little bit questionable, I think that surely he's got to go back there. But again, I'm not too sure. But given that fact, he's got the bye this week anyway, I would most likely be holding off the Hines pick at this stage. And we'll finish, as always, with the forwards under 250k. There's not much to see here apart from one man up the top. I've got it in bold. CCJ, a ruck forward, 161,200. Average of 99, a negative break-even, if you don't mind, of 102. Projected score of 86. This bad man is looking to rise over 80k this week. He is clearly the best buy. So if you don't have him, it's really simple. Get him in. Find a way to get him in. It's going to be pretty easy. He's only at 160k. I'm sure many of us have a Warner or a Rowe, one of these types. So just bring this man in this week. It's a really simple one. Maxi Holmes, I don't think he plays this week, so a pass from me. Even if he does, I don't think he's going to cover for that really important round 14 bye. Zach Langdon, I am a hard pass on. Do not go anywhere near him. Roses, I think, again, is just a pass. A break-even of 5, 3-rounder of 35. Just not for me. Waterman, wrapped with him over the weekend. Just the fact that he's playing, I'm happy with. So, break-even of 10. Yeah, hopefully he can reach at least 250k for us. And some of us may be able to use him either as cover for the rest of the year or use him as part of your last upgrade, I think. And Finn McRae, I've got the poo on him. Poor Finn. So that's it for this week, guys. Thank you very much for staying with me. I'm going to leave it there because, as I said, the weather is absolutely terrible here at the moment. My internet connection is still holding up. So before anything else happens, it's upload time. So all the best luck for this week. And please remember to check out our SuperCoach Swordplay podcast that Spills and I uploaded last night and our new channel, SuperCoach Swordplay. Take care, guys. See you later. Bye.